Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Breaking the Game show. I am here with special guest Kevin Couliau, who is a world-renowned basketball film director. He's a photographer and a documenter. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm good. A little bit cold, but I'm really well. I'm glad to be on Breaking the Game.
Oh, well, we're very glad to have you. Unfortunately, my co-host Austin Carr, it's Thanksgiving here in the States, right? So he's doing things with his family and stuff like that. My wife has given me, permission to do this. So, I'm not going to get in trouble for being here with you this morning. So, I'm just very excited to have you, Kevin. You've done a lot of it,
Thanks.
very, just awesome work, for lack of a better words. Like I've seen a lot of the stuff that you've done, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like how did you get into doing all these things? What is it like to meet, all these people and get to work with them? To me, it just seems incredible. But
Thanks.
just for the listeners and the audience who may not know a little bit about what you do you want to just share some of the things that it is that you do?
Sure. First and foremost, I'm a basketball player. That's my passion. Like playing basketball. That's what I've been doing since I'm 6 years old. I'm 38 now, and basically it has always had a big impact on my life. Obviously on the athletic side, but also on my professional side on what I'm doing as for a living. And I've been for the past 15 years documenting basketball, mostly grassroots basketball from my hometown in France, it's a city called Nantes. So I grew up, playing club basketball and outdoor basketball on the playground. And I started documenting basketball there. And for the past 15 years, I've been traveling the world to document playground basketball from New York City to Manila to countries, in Africa and everything else. So yeah, that's what I've been doing, being a photographer and a filmmaker for the past 15 years. Yeah.
Excellent. So you're a player. What position would you say that you play?
Now I'm playing as a shooting guard mostly. Growing up, I was playing point guard a lot, but the older I got, the better I got with my 3-point range, and now I'm a pure shooter.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. So I mean, it's interesting, like how our game evolves depending on our age and physical abilities too. Because I had like a ACL injury and everything like that. So it has shifted my game a little bit.
I understand. Yeah, I'm 30 now. I've been playing since I was about 11. I got into it a little bit later than most, but I like to consider myself a little bit of a, kind of a 2-3 like shooting guard,
Mm-hmm.
small forward type. But I grew up in a very small town in Arkansas, is where I'm from originally, and I went to a very small community where, at 6 foot, I was asked to play, the 4 and the 5 a little bit. So, then I got to play basketball in bigger communities, and I realized, wow, like I should not be in the paint as much as I'm comfortable with. So I had to kind of change how I play a little bit too, so I can respect and relate to that now. So, Kevin, for what I know a little bit about your history. I've watched several interviews that you've done for like NBA XL. I thought that interview was outstanding, and I know a little bit about what has been your inspiration. Do you
Mhm.
just kind of want to share how you got into basketball and photography, and like how that kind of shaped, who you are today?
Yeah, sure. So like growing up, playing basketball and also doing skateboarding has influenced me a lot. Because my older brother was a professional skateboarder, and he was also a filmmaker. And it started really young, really early for him. At 16 years old, he was already traveling the world to do skateboarding contests. And he was also filming at the same time. So I would see him, in my home, in our home, like edit videos, of from old like VHS recorders and like the old school way, and
Yeah.
he would not force me, but I would automatically, like watch all the skateboarding videos, and because his friends were always there, and there's a specific, approach to filmmaking and photography in skateboarding, because this is what they use to promote themselves, and like they always rely on this content to find sponsors, and so it's a really interesting industry on that side. And me, I was doing a little bit of skateboarding, but basketball was my main sport. So I was always, like comparing, like, why in basketball we don't bring a video camera on the court? Why we don't have a photographer with us when we go play outdoors? So, like maybe in the span of 10 years, like the idea like grew in my mind. And when I got my first camera in 2004, I started shooting my friends on my playground, because some of them like had like a unique style. And one of my friends called Hervé was jumping so high with so much like graceness, and it was so graceful. That's what pushed me to start documenting playground basketball, is the aesthetic of my friends, playing, and the aesthetic of the playgrounds too.
Excellent. So starting off with, kind of like that skateboarding aspect, and, the love that your brother had for that. And obviously you had a little bit of love for it too, but basketball was a bigger part, right? So
yeah.
Did you see anything between the two sports that kind of segued you into thinking like, wow, I could really do something with basketball the way that these, directors and photographers do with skateboarding?
Yeah, definitely. There are, I think, multiple factors, especially when you take account only like playground basketball. I think it's a global culture, and it's a movement into itself also, like skateboarding is. Because in skateboard they travel to places around the world to find like skate spots. Depending on the architecture, it's more or less creative. But the whole concept of going on a skateboard trip, with friends, it is about that. Like going to one place, hunting for the best spot, like in surfing too. And in basketball, in playground basketball, is more or less the same. But usually people do it within the same city, like let's say New York City. That's what they used to do, play against guys in the Bronx or in Queens and in Brooklyn. But I really like the global approach to it, and say, okay, I'm gonna go to Spain to find out what's the best basketball court, and how the guys are playing over there. I'm going to go to Greece. I'm going to go to New York City. So that's what I find similar, with skateboarding culture with basketball, is that we also have this subculture of playground curiosity, that where we can explore the world and find spots like skateboarders find skate spots.
Okay, so that's an interesting concept, right? I've never really thought of basketball in the same light as, skateboarding and surfing and things like that. But the way you just kind of painted that out for me makes a lot of sense. So when you've traveled to all these, different geographical locations and things like that, have you noticed that specific cities and countries have their own style of play compared to other styles in the world? Or do you feel like, the game kind of travels the same regardless of where it's played?
The game travels the same. It's just that the level will obviously be different, and because it has also a link with the amount of exposure you have to professional basketball and to good basketball. Let's say in China, or in Hong Kong, for example, you have amazing courts, the most beautiful courts in the world to me. So many people playing, but the level of intensity they have, when they play, is nothing compared to what you find in the States or in Europe. So I think it's just sometimes about the culture and how the game has been raised there. But it's evolving. In Africa, it's the same. In Africa, they're just lack of coaching and fundamentals, because of the lack of people to teach these people, so but it's evolving depending on where you are around the world.
That's excellent. And you kind of see that too whenever is particularly in the NBA, right, where we have the best athletes in the world, and you have these players coming from Africa, like Pascal Siakam, Bam Adebayo, Giannis Antetokounmpo is of African descent, played in Greece, right? And then you had guys like E.G. and Lian who came over from China, Yao Ming, and their games are very different. I mean, it's the same concept, right? Like dribble, pass, shoot, defend, right? But it's interesting. I'm sure you've seen firsthand, the way that the cultural, influence that each country provides to the game is just completely different.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, like in Europe, for example, we always had like a team basketball game, like we're all about passing and the same picks and the ball is always in motion. And even within Europe, if you go to Spain, to Greece, like even that their culture is even more about passing the ball and then always moving. And it's super interesting because the game is played differently, but it's the same game.
Yeah, obviously.
The main difference I would see with the States is sometimes the intensity, of course, but there's an entertaining approach of outdoor basketball in the States. So you guys have a lot of funny games, like 21 or taps and all these specialty games that are recreational stuff, that we don't really do in Europe because we never got taught these things, and we never learned that, we are like 7, we can play 21. What is 21? Like we growing up, I didn't know 21.
Okay.
I would have loved to play like this massive one-on-one with my friends,
Yeah.
Because I think it learns you learn from these games, that's the main difference, like some stuff like that didn't really travel overseas.
Oh, okay, yeah, and 21. I mean, it's an interesting and fun game, right? Because it's like if you don't have enough people to play a full pickup game, you can just say, all right, let me work on my individual skill set against my friends, and try some things that in a real game I probably wouldn't ever really attempt to do. So that's interesting, and it's just enlightening, to someone like me who just obviously is from the States, to be able to hear certain aspects of the game that I've grew up playing, don't exist in other parts of the world. It's pretty interesting. So, Kevin, you touched on the city of New York, obviously in France, right? What is the view that people in Europe typically will have of a New York City in regards to basketball?
The worst NBA team? No, I'm joking.
I mean, I'm not a Knicks fan, so you're not hurting my feelings. But
no, that's it's a shame. But no, I think New York has always had a lot of influence on European people for multiple reasons. Of course, the basketball culture, NBA and streetball culture, the music, New York City, East Coast hip hop, Paris, for example, and France in general is a big country in hip hop. So we've always been super influenced by New York City in that regard. But just on the basketball side, I think New York's aura is just like massive and has an influence on the rest of the world. We look up at New York City more so than LA, for example, when it comes to basketball, because that's everybody knows where the culture comes from and the swag of the game. I mean, I grew up watching Soul in the Hole and like Rebound, The Legend of All Money God, and like stuff like that. And I think and of course in the skateboarding world, like the New York era and all those stuff had a big impact on my perception of New York City and the game. So New York City, I think is like this concentration of a lot of influences.
Yeah, that's interesting. I myself, I'm from, southern, the southern part of the United States. I've never really been to New York City, but even still, like, even for someone like myself, I understand the importance that New York has to not only just basketball, but just cultural influences in general, right? And even though, the New York Knicks aren't really doing that well, you still even see like the Brooklyn has a basketball team now, and they're starting to develop and look like they're going to be kind of a formidable opponent in the NBA. And you
Definitely.
touched on how, New York has influenced you in particular. As a film director, you've done projects like, Doing It in the Park, which touches on kind of that pickup aspect of basketball and how that influences New York in general. What kind of things did you learn in doing that type of project?
I mean, I learned a lot. It was super interesting because Doing It in a Park was my first feature film. It's a lot of hard work, to because we spent 2 consecutive summers doing the shooting the film, 2010 and 2011. So it was a lot of footage, a lot of interviews to go through. So we spent a lot of time, like writing the film. We spent a lot of time cutting out everything and editing the film. I mean, it's a process. It's a long process. It's a 2 years or 3 years of your life dedicating on one project, and yeah, I learned the amount of time you need to do this kind of films. Regarding New York City, I learned a lot of things. It's like being on the bicycle with basketball, going through the 5 boroughs with a camera. It was maybe the best experience of my life.
Excellent. Yeah. And on your website, the kevincouliau.com, where you have a lot of, the work that you've done, that's on there. And you also have a project called Heart and Soul of New York City.
Yeah.
Was that done kind of in correlation with Doing It in the Park, or was that a completely separate project in of itself?
So that was my first video project in New York City, a serious video project. It was a year before. So I spent a full summer, 2009, documenting streetball in Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Harlem, essentially, because it was a project for a German basketball brand called K1X, which I used to work for before as a marketing and sales manager in France. And I quit that job in 2009 to dedicate fully to video and photo. So I went to New York City, and they asked me to do a film about New York City, summer of New York City streetball, for this rapper called Red Cafe.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I spent most of my nights, on the local tournaments in Harlem, like Together We Chill, and we went. There was one called Lower Manhattan Classic too. There was one in Brooklyn, and yeah, I would basically be totally emerge, in that culture and film and live my dream, So in the end, we did the edit, and this film had a lot of success online, which was quite unexpected. And it was my really first start as a filmmaker, and Bobby Todd saw the video, and that's how we kicked in for Doing It in a Park.
Excellent. So was there anything outside the world of basketball, that really captured, your imagination and attention in New York, just even outside of basketball? I know that that's a big part of what you do, but, in traveling to the States, what were some of the other aspects of the culture that maybe influenced you or that you just, found interesting?
I mean, just regarding New York City, just the city itself, how cinematic is the city. The light is so special in New York City, which is really interesting. New York City and even LA have different lights. It's kind of weird. It's tough to explain, but when you're to me, a summer in New York City is so unique. A lot of people don't want to be in New York City during the summer because it's super hot, and like they tend to escape the city. But me, that's my favorite time of the year, being in New York City during summer, because you see so many beautiful lights coming through the buildings, and it creates super cinematic scenes. So just the city itself, it inspires me on a daily basis, and I wish I was living there right now.
I could imagine, and plus like even from the outside looking in, I've never been, but you watch anytime you watch a movie or listening to music, you can almost just kind of like feel the energy that's put off from from a city like that. And that's something that kind of is intriguing to me from someone who's from a small town. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. So Kevin, I want to talk to you a little bit about the photography part of what you do. You have done a number of great collections on your website. Even, I've looked at them and I love them. And this is coming from someone who's not like super artistic. My wife is, and she loved your work, by the way. She wanted me to let you know that she loved your work. As someone who just loves basketball, right? I can appreciate what you've done. I'm looking through here. The Park is My Church. I found that one to be pretty interesting because, and I've heard this on several interviews that you've done too, that basketball to you like has a religious aspect to it, like a spirituality almost, if you will. And even myself, playing basketball, growing up, white guy from a small town in Arkansas, you can go to a basketball court and play with someone from a completely different background and, upbringing from yourself, and you're just brothers on the basketball court. And I love that so much about the game. And I think that kind of feeds into what you were speaking about in your interviews and what you captured on these pictures, right? For The Park is My Church. Can you just kind of explain a little bit about kind of your influence for that?
Yeah, sure. I think, it's this name, The Park is My Church, came when we were doing the film Doing It in the Park with Bobito, because we felt the same way about what the court has brought to us, as human beings, and what it represents. As basketball players, we spend so much time, training and going on the court, and quite often you find yourself alone, on these courts. You're just shooting by yourself, and it's a way of basically it's not praying, but more or less, it's something like where you basically cut yourself out of the rest of the world, and you're just yourself and the hoop, and the only goal for you is just to communicate with it, and I think that's what I'm trying to crystallize with my photos, is that the basketball court is almost like a temple, a sort of sanctuary for all of us. Every ball player who wants to get rid of a pain or sadness or something is wrong in his life, he goes to the court and everything is forgotten instantly for that very own moment. And there's also, like the architecture component to that, because of course a church is beautiful, a mosque is beautiful, and it's a beautiful piece of architecture. But a basketball court is beautiful in that same spirit too. It's often located at the middle of a neighborhood. It can be colorful. The hoop has different shapes, different materials, different poles holding the hoop. There's a lot of things to take into account, and that's what I like. It's like visiting a church in Rome or a church in the States. It's different, but still everybody goes there and to communicate with a certain God. I'm not a religious person, but if I had to be a religious person, my God would be James Naismith or the Hoop. I don't know, but
I hear you. Yeah. And myself, I am a religious person, but I do appreciate, kind of how entrenched, like we can be when we're on the basketball court, like even the sounds, right? Like even if you're, even like you mentioned, even if you're alone, right, and you're having a bad day, you're going through a tough time, just something about the sound of a basketball, bouncing off of a hardwood or an asphalt, or going through a net or a chain, or even even if you miss a shot. I don't know if you ever miss shots, Kevin. I do every once in a while.
I do.
So you know what it sounds like when it bounces off like a double rim or something like that. It kind of like lets you know, like, hey, you did something wrong here, right? Like it's very unforgiving when you miss sometimes. But I do appreciate what you captured in that one. Now the book of Giannis, and this is one I want to touch on. Because Giannis could be leaving Milwaukee here soon, right? He has to sign his Supermax. We don't know what he's going to do, but could be going to Miami. It may be sad for some people, but what was it like working with Giannis? From what I've seen, you've actually spent, some time with him in his homeland, and got to experience some things with him. What was working with Giannis Antetokounmpo like?
It was amazing, man. The great thing about that, it happened the year before he got the MVP. So he was still accessible, I think. Even in his homeland. Of course, he's a local guy. Everybody knows him, and he was an NBA star. But now that he has passed this, like superstar level and superstar, label. Even when he gets back, he goes back to his homeland. It's now like it's a different story. But we had the chance to spend a week with him with the agency Wyden and Kennedy to prepare this book of Giannis, which is something Nike used internally to tell the story of Giannis, to prepare the shoe design and the story they were about to launch for the shoe. So yeah, we spent a week with him, and he showed us his home court, the playground where he grew up with his brother. He showed us the gym where he started basketball. He showed us the church where he used to go, the bar that is located in front of the playground where the guy used to feed them. It was really interesting because he's a humble guy. The whole family is super humble. And as a photography standpoint, is just like so impressive. Like I've never seen an athlete like that. He's so athletic, so quick, so mobile. And for me, it was just insane. Because let's say in the gym when we were doing some photos at some point, it just in 1 euro step, you would go from one side of the paint to the other.
Right.
Which is surreal.
Yeah, being 7 feet tall with a handle, turns out is a pretty useful skill to have, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, but no, it's I think it's pretty rare, that we photographers have the chance to spend time with NBA players like that, and tell their story on the local story, where they come from. It's pretty rare, and I wish more brands were doing that, because I think it helps a lot to understand the guys, and where they come from, and it helps build the story for these athletes too. So, yeah, we'll see.
I could see how if you were to go to Milwaukee and shoot with him, it may feel a little less organic. It may be a little bit more forced, whereas in his homeland, right? He's Giannis, he's not the Greek freak, nobody would, I'm sure he doesn't really ever get called the Greek freak in his homeland, right? Like that's just,
they use it. They use it.
Do they?
They
wow.
use it. Yeah, of course. But no, of course they call him Giannis. But it's definitely a different thing to see him, in that environment with all the Greek people, and it's a different vibe. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that, it's rare to get an opportunity to work with people like that. But Kevin, I got to be honest with you. I'm looking at the Attack of the Name Game, collection that you have right now. And I mean, if that's rare, you've got quite a collection. I'm looking at guys like Victor Oladipo, Jabari Parker. I mean, former, United States President Barack Obama. And again, I've listened to interviews with you, so I know how, I've listened to you express, what it was like to work with projects like that. But just for the sake of my, my audience, please indulge me here. What was it like to be able to work with a former United States president, with I believe he was doing the Giants of Africa project, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, just to tell about the context, I've been working with Giants of Africa for the past 5 years. So it's the non-profit of Masai Ujiri, the GM of the Toronto Raptors. And yeah, it's just volunteer work I've been doing for 4 or 5 years, and you never know where it leads you. I've been super lucky to help them and travel around the continent, around Africa, in so many countries, just to shoot basketball camps. And Masai is such a great guy that wants to do so many things in his homeland and the continent, that and of course he is successful in the NBA world. So
correct. Yes.
People like Barack Obama, noticed that, and they became friends. So thing that happened is that Barack has a half sister in Kenya that owns a nonprofit that is doing education for unprivileged kids.
Oh, that's neat.
And so the partnership started like that. Obama, which is his half sister, basically talked with Masai to build a basketball court, which was designed by Wilson Duong, the creative director of Giants of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
I helped a little bit on design, but I wasn't the guy behind the computer to fully design it.
But you had a hand in it, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, and so we designed that court, which had the rooftop and everything, and Barack Obama came to inaugurate the court while he was in Kenya to visit the grave of his father. Which was surreal because it's a former president of the United States who comes. CIA and Secret Services are here to protect him. Lots of protocol, and it's small people. I was the only only photographer who was like near Barack Obama during the event. There was another photographer, but couldn't be as close as I was. And for me, it meant the world because what Obama stands for in the basketball culture, and for us, I think it's pretty unique. Seeing a president of the United States, or even any president, playing basketball the way he does, and being able to express his love for the game the same way than we do, I think it's amazing. He's always on point, and the stuff he said during this inauguration, about basketball and what the game has brought to him was quite surreal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that in itself, like that would be like a highlight moment of anybody's life, and the exclusive access that you had. I'm sure that that meant a lot to you to be able to do a project like that.
Yeah.
So I'm looking right now still. Obviously, we lost a legend in the basketball community very recently. That of Kobe Bryant, and I'm looking at a photograph in particular right now. It looks like he's sitting on a roof, and there's statues behind him. Can you talk a little bit about how you maybe got to be the one to be able to do a shoot with Kobe Bryant, and what that process was in your interaction with him?
So Kobe came to Paris a few years ago, and yeah, I mean, I work with Nike a lot on photo shoots, and thanks to all this work of dedication, I managed to get clients like Nike, and Kobe came for a few days in Paris. So I was in charge of following him around, and we ended up on a rooftop. There was like a more a commercial shoot that was organized for him with a different photographer, and I just followed him and managed to shoot all these like profiles, portraits, and I did a lot of other photos of him, going to the PSG to meet Neymar and Kylian Mbappe. It was quite a great experience because I've always been like a Kobe fan, and I've been playing with his shoes forever.
The Mamba.
Yeah, exactly. And just being around him and seeing him like sharing his knowledge, when he was training the kids in Paris, and it was so impressive to see him, and take the time to teach the game. That's the most impressive thing. And with the medias, he answered medias in like 2 or 3 different languages: Italian, Spanish, English, a little bit of French. Every media he was answering the medias in a different language. So it just shows how brilliant the guy was.
Absolutely. I mean, you hear stories about him, even people who haven't interacted with him much. You hear how he was with, treating people who weren't just, media personalities, security guards. It was, people who worked the concessions and stuff like that. Like everybody always said that Kobe, for as much ferocity as he brings on the court, and to be an opponent of his is probably no fun. Jalen Rose talks about it all the time every time he brings up Kobe Bryant, right? But from all accounts, right, the person of Kobe Bryant, I've never really heard or met anybody who really has a whole lot of negative things to say about him. And I'm sure, and after he retired, right, he wanted to give so much back to the world of basketball. The work that he did for the WNBA, because his daughter was aspiring to to be a professional athlete like her daddy, right? So I'm sure that was a privilege and an honor, right, to be able to
Definitely.
work
Yeah,
with
it
him.
was. Yeah, it was. It's pretty rare, to meet the gods of our sport, in some ways, it's yeah, in the span of the same year I got to shoot Kobe and Barack Obama, which was quite surreal.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm sure that was just, what do moments like that mean to you, Kevin? Do you ever feel like, wow, I made it? Or do you just feel like, man, this is a very humbling experience? Or is it somewhere in the middle,
I never really think about it like that. The how or the wow, I made it.
Right.
I'm because I never really grew as a fan of people. I never really grew as a kind of photographer who sets goals. I never really say, okay, my goal is to shoot. I don't know, LeBron James.
Which you have done.
Yeah, but I honestly don't really care about the celebrities much. I think what I care about what they bring to the game culturally and their impact on the game itself. That's what I enjoy the most, than the name, and that's why my photography has been so focused on unknown people, and communities and people playing basketball around the world. Is that I'm more interested in what the game is bringing to people than the fame, around it.
Yeah, and that comes across in a lot of the works that you've done, like in the collection that you have, Rise, and even Out of Bounds, where you're just capturing the beauty of the courts and capturing the beauty of the community surrounding those areas, and that really does come across. And Kevin, by all accounts, in the short time that I've interacted with you, you don't really ever come across as a guy that's like, oh wow, I made it type guy. Like, you're a very very humble guy, and you're very personable too, which and that comes across in the work that you do as well.
Thanks.
Absolutely. So Kevin, I just got a couple more questions. One is, you mentioned that you've been a game of the basketball, I believe you said, since 6 years old, correct? So and you've said that you're 38 now. I'm 30, so I'm getting up there, with you. I'm trying to catch up, right? But obviously the game in of itself has changed so much. The emphasis of spreading the court open and shooting the ball, as opposed to packing the paint and trying to just force the ball in the hoop, right? And playing just pick up, arm check defense, right? Are there any aspects of the game that you have enjoyed seeing like be implemented more and more, or do you still kind of feel nostalgic when you go back and see like late 80s, early 90s basketball? I guess which era is kind of favored, if you have one?
I think on some level, what I enjoy is seeing teams playing more team ball, in the NBA right now, understanding the value of what the Spurs and the Raptors, or like teams like that, have brought to the table. Playing like unselfish basketball where there is no star and the ball is moving. I think a lot of NBA teams have understood that now. So they're trying to build their roster accordingly. I love the fact that guys are shooting a lot of threes. I think it's great to see the evolution of the NBA, of the game itself. It's like in skateboarding. Like the skateboarding world has evolved so much. Like kids are now doing stuff that in the 90s were unthinkable. And they are just so talented because they are even more creative than what we were in the 90s. What I think was better in the 90s was the respect of the rules of the game. What the travel was, what
yes.
No, but I think it's important. The travel, the carry, guys are carrying the ball all the time, which is super annoying. These like we let James Harden do these like triple step backs, which should be called all the time. because he doesn't need that to be an excellent scorer. He's good
Correct.
enough, and I think that's the kind of stuff that annoys me in today's game, just because for the sake of entertainment, guys who are traveling, doing like 5 steps in fast break, just to put a layup. This kind of stuff I think should be like more like cold, and what I don't really like, it's more on a global perspective, is that basketball is one of the few sports that has different rules depending on which continent you are in. The FIBA versus the NBA rules, the college in the States versus the NBA, and everything. And I think it should be the same rules for everybody, same size of court, same thing, because to me it's creating this blurry zone where we are, in international competitions, and the game in Europe is not the same than in the States because of the difference of rules. We don't have illegal defense in Europe. We don't have all these things, so the game is more
The
compact.
goaltending rule is a lot different too, right?
Yeah, goaltending is different, and when you look at soccer, for example, which is the most popular sport in the world,
right?
Soccer is just one set of rules that are universal. And I think it helps, promote the sport, and it helps make the sport more popular if everybody around the world plays with the same rules.
I could see that, and you see it even in the States, right? You mentioned the college basketball compared to the NBA. You see guys struggle in college who go to the NBA and do a lot better because of that, the rule changes, and vice versa. You see guys who are super successful in college but struggle in the NBA because the game is kind of catered a little bit to what they're better at. So you definitely see that, and especially too, I think the NBA would benefit a lot from the adopting the European goaltending rule. I really do.
Yeah.
I think that you would see a lot of players thrive more. One thing that I wish the NBA would bring back is, with all of the advantage kind of tilting towards the offense, bring back being able to put a hand on a guy's hip or a forearm on the guy's hip a little bit, just to be able to steer him a little bit. So,
no, definitely.
All right. Well, Kevin, last one I have for you before we close today, brother. France has had a lot of really talented NBA players. Who are some of the guys that you like in the NBA? It doesn't have to be just a French descent, right? But who are some of the favorite players that you had in the NBA?
The current NBA?
Sure, or along the line of just growing to love the game, like maybe who it was when you started and maybe who it is today.
Growing up, I mean, obviously I was an MJ fan like everybody, and I think I had these tapes, the Michael Jordan Playground, the Come Fly With Me, Michael Jordan's Airtime. So these were the only 3 basketball tapes I had at home. So I was watching these, like, rewind and everything to look how MJ was moving his feet, and that's how I learned the game. Basically watching MJ. But I never got so as athletic as him. But I was also a big Scottie Pippen fan. I think he was graceful and a great guy, great player. I mean, a great player, not a great guy, but a great player.
I've heard the stories of Scottie.
But now in the more recent NBA, I kind of like guys like Klay Thompson. What are so sound fundamentally, and so good in everything they do. I think it's great to see guys like that in the NBA too, who are able to score like 40 points with just 2 dribbles.
and kind of unselfish at the same time too, right?
Yeah, exactly. But like, there are so many players that I enjoy to watch. It's tough, especially in the young ones. You see like guys now. But I've never been a LeBron James fan because he never really inspired me. On the style of play he has never really inspired me, because it's super hard to relate to his game, because he's just like so physical and so athletic. It's out of this world. I mean, he's so good, but who can compare himself to LeBron James?
That's a good point, and I think that's where a lot of people kind of struggle to be like, no one can identify with him. Like, we've seen a bunch of guys come out of the college world who were more like Steph Curry than LeBron James, even though you
Yeah.
could probably argue that LeBron is the better player of the two, right?
Yeah.
And real quick, you mentioned Scottie Pippen. I'm a fan of his. I actually attended the University of Central Arkansas, which is where he went to college.
Yeah.
He's from Arkansas too, so he gives people like me hope. From a at least a lesser popular state in the United States, right? Kevin, before I let you get out of here, we talked a little bit offline about this. You can't give any specifics, because you have a lot of confidentiality that goes along with the work that you do. But anything in the works that as far as projects that you have coming along?
Yeah, so multiple things. First, I run a small magazine called Asphalt Chronicles, which is an independent magazine where I basically tell the story of one city at a time, the playground basketball stories, where to play, who are the local legends. I'm doing a reprint of the first two issues pretty soon, which are about Manila and Dakar in Senegal. So this is coming soon. And besides that, I'm working on a sort of a sequel of Doin in the Park in form of a documentary series. So this is in negotiations right now. And then I'm working on a book about basketball in Hong Kong.
Oh, excellent stuff.
Yeah. So, but everything is work in progress. So hopefully, 2021, some of it will be released.
Absolutely. And I'm going to have to get a couple of copies of the Asphalt Chronicles, because I have, I got a buddy of mine who he does the Hardwood Herald. He just started up. I'm starting to collect basketball magazines. I have a couple of slams as well. So I'm definitely going to have to, order a copy of the Asphalt Chronicles. But Kevin, I just want to thank you so much for, giving us a little bit of time here. It's a little bit earlier in the day, which is fine. I don't mind getting up. Like I said, I'm married and I got kids. I don't know what it's like to sleep in anymore. But
I see the sun rising behind you.
Yes, it's a beautiful day here in Kings Bay, Georgia. But I just, again, thank you so much, Kevin. I appreciate how personable and accessible you've been to me, and just the amount of, we've done a lot of communicating to make this happen, and I just appreciate all the time and energy that you've given me today. I just want to encourage the listeners that if you want to follow Kevin, he is actually on Twitter at Asphalt Chronicles, correct? That's
I'm not so much on Twitter, but on Instagram is the best way to find me. Yeah, Asphalt Chronicles on Instagram.
Okay, yeah, I'm more so on Twitter, but I do have an Instagram, so I'm gonna have to go in there and add you now, and I'm gonna have to be more active on there. But yeah, go and follow Kevin on both platforms at Asphalt Chronicles. As for myself, again, Austin wasn't here today, but it was awesome being able to have Kevin, who's just a renowned basketball film director, documenter, and photographer. If you like the show, please share, like, subscribe, and follow. You can follow me on Twitter at StephenBTG, which stands for Breaking the Game, the name of the show. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at BTG NBA Pod. Kevin, do you got anything that you want to say before we go?
No, I mean, if you're from Arkansas, you should check my friend Yassin Toomey, who just signed with the University of Arkansas.
You said Yassin Toomey?
Yassin Toomey, yeah. He's a French Arabic kid who is starting this week, I think, playing with them. Young prospect. Yeah, keep an eye on him.
Oh, yes, sir. You got my attention. I'm definitely going to follow him now. Thank you for turning me on to him, for real. I appreciate that, Kevin.
All right, man. Thanks.
All right, guys. Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. As for you, the viewer and listeners, thank you guys so much for tuning in and supporting the show. Just stay tuned. We'll be back to our regular programming after this Thanksgiving break. And thank you guys so much for listening. We'll catch up with you guys next time. Much love, everybody.